Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to our living room. Welcome, Ronn McFarlane.
Thank you. Good to be in your living room again. And imagine the aromas there from your cooking, from the Christmas tree in the background, and all the great memories of being there in the past.
Yeah, and it will happen again. We are more and more optimistic about that, right?
Yes, can't come soon enough for me.
Yeah, you've been holed up there in Maryland, right?
Yes, since March. I officially live in Oregon, but I haven't seen Oregon since end of February, beginning of March. I've been hunkered down around Ellicott City, Maryland, just outside of Baltimore, where I was playing some concerts right about the time that the coronavirus lockdown started.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and here we are, 9 months later. Yeah, it's going a lot longer than we would all like, right? So.
Yes.
So that's why we're doing these little chats, so we can feel closer to each other. It's a special time of year. In my opinion, it's kind of my favorite time of year because it's a way to look back and celebrate the year. And of course, we won't be doing that this year.
Yes.
We'll just be going forward.
You know, I think it's my favorite time of year to be in New York also. I
Yeah.
really love the city around this time of year.
Oh yeah, it's a little like a ghost town. I posted a photo on Facebook yesterday. I did have an actual singing gig, church service in the morning, and I got off of the subway at West 50th and 7th Avenue, and there was absolutely no one in the station except myself, and I
saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that post, and it was completely empty. It was unreal. I've never seen the subways like that.
Yeah. And of course, yes, that's a good thing. It means people are staying home, they're wearing masks, but it's kind of like when 9/11 happened, you know it happened, and then all of a sudden it hits you, the devastation and the tragedy, and that's kind of what happened to me yesterday. As you mentioned,
We are now having one 9/11 every day.
Yeah.
And that gives us a kind of an understanding how the mind works. Because 9/11, it was spectacular. It happened in one time. Mm-hmm. And so the effect was extremely strong and concentrated. But now the same thing is going on, sneaking under, we hear it, but we don't really understand. We don't know how to grab it into our mind, that the fact that 300,000 people have died now.
yeah,
In this country. I mean, it's like, I don't remember the total. Anyway.
in one day, right? I mean, every day, the same amount of people.
Well, 300,000 in the States, but
total.
millions
All over the
the whole
world.
planet.
Yeah.
Anyway, we say we're gonna be cheery, right?
Yeah. Well, so speaking of things we don't understand, Ron has a new album that he just released, and it's called Fermis Paradox. And maybe, Ron, you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Enrico Fermi was an Italian physicist who lived in the middle part of the 20th century. He was working in Chicago, very famous, noted physicist. And his paradox was his observation of the overwhelming likelihood that there's intelligent life out there on other planets somewhere. And yet there's absolutely no scientific proof of their existence. So his question is, where is everybody? And I can hear the wonderful sirens of New York all the way from here in Maryland.
Midtown Manhattan. We're here in the middle of it. But yes, that is fascinating. And together with Ron and Marianne Ballard, my co-daughter of Galileo's Daughters, we performed with the astrophysicist, he's not necessarily an astrophysicist.
No, he's an astrophysicist, I think.
Okay,
so. Yeah,
but radio.
Radio astronomy,
yeah.
it's astronomy.
Well, Dr. Frank Drake was our narrator at a concert we did in Santa Cruz, and he wrote the Drake equation.
Yeah, the Drake equation, which basically is a series of statements. You know, how many stars in the galaxy, how many stars that would be have planets around them, and how many planets would be around stars, how many planets would be livable. I mean, there's all these different elements, and he made this equation, and he came to the conclusion that there were at least 1,000 or 2,000 different civilizations, but he way underestimated actually the number of planets. We know now that there are, in every star there's at least one planet, and there's billions of stars. So the whole extraterrestrial civilization, or just life beyond our planet, it's looking a lot possible.
Yes.
Well, I
So it seems
prefer
like
to
a
think
time
about
of year to
that
ask,
than.
is anyone out there?
I'm sorry?
I said, so it seems like a time this year to ask, is there anyone out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, Frank Drake and Dave Sobel wrote a book entitled "Is There Anyone Out There?"
Really?
Yes,
I
Yep.
missed that.
That was
Look it
a
up.
collaboration that Dave and Frank did, and it's fascinating. I actually read it, but because it's a little over my head, scientifically speaking. But it's about the history of him getting to where he was, as far as doing his work and listening to the universe. Very fascinating indeed.
One little interesting thing about this is, from the beginning of the 20th century, radio happened. So we started broadcasting electromagnetic waves, which are the waves that can be heard. I mean, heard from another system, and it's at 100 now. It's probably 120 light years, which is minuscule. Actually, I should do this demonstration when you see our radio sphere. There's a radio sphere, and it encloses about 1,000 stars, but it's very small compared to the whole galaxy. But with the Wi-Fi and digitalization, we are losing this electromagnetic spectrum. So radio is disappearing, so we're becoming silent again. So we were silent, and technology made us very loud because there was a lot of radio, powerful, and now we are becoming silent again. So if we're going to communicate, we might have to intentionally broadcast.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I remember you saying something at some point. I'm sure people are thinking, wow, they must have really interesting conversations late at night. But about the fact that if we're too noisy, we could be attracting.
No, it's not that we're too noisy. It's somebody can hear us. Are they going to be benevolent, or are they going to be, willing to conquer? And the history is not so good about this,
Okay, now we're going down another scary road.
Okay, Ron. Why made you put this name to your album?
Well, I had a piece that I wrote. The piece of music is called Fermis Paradox. And it wasn't written so much with that specific idea in mind, but it was a piece where it has a particular musical motive that made me think of looking up at the sky. And that feeling you get, that sort of knee-weakening feeling of awe when you look up and see the reality of this place that we live in the universe, because we're so used to being inside and living our lives and communicating with one another that we don't think about where we really are. And it just sort of made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up to think about that. So it had this musical motive that just it's an expression of awe. It's an expression of the wonder of the universe. And then the piece has other sections as well. But I then was casting about for a title for it, and it felt that Fermis Paradox fit the feelings and the intent of the music. So it felt like a true title for the music itself.
Great. That sounds good to me. That is an idea that we really are very small, and sometimes we think our problems are so big, but if we take a few steps back and look at the forest for the trees,
Yes.
you'd have a good perspective to really.
That's what we need.
Yeah. we do.
Perspective.
Yeah.
We
need
lack
perspective.
perspective is lacking.
Yes,
Indeed.
if your little problems feel really big, as they do for me sometimes, if you look at the big picture, it does put things in perspective.
That's-
Definitely.
Exactly. So we've invited you here to entertain us as well. Hope you don't mind. Oh, you have your lute.
You just noticed that.
Wink, wink. So would you like to start off with something?
I'd be glad to. This is something from the Fermis Paradox album. It's actually a cover of an old Allman Brothers tune, which is now about 50 years old. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
This is Little Martha, written by Duane Allman, which was originally a sweet guitar duet with Dickie Betts and Duane Allman. And I've arranged it here for lute, actually lute, percussion, and viola da gamba on the recording. But I think it'll hold up okay with just the lute today. So here it is, Little Martha by Duane Allman.
All right. Bravo.
Beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Explain a little bit. You should explain a little bit the lute, because I was just thinking. Okay, you're playing 20th century music on a 17th, 16th,
Yes.
century
So this
instrument.
lute- This is a sort of instrument that might have been played around 1600, 1620. I'll just give you a little bit of a, here's the end of it. There's the back, which is a rounded back.
Oh, yeah.
Here's
I'm
the
sorry.
neck box.
Yeah. Cool.
And this was a really, really popular instrument about 400 years ago, but not so much now. It kind of hit its heyday around the time of Shakespeare, I suppose. but this has 19 strings. It has a single treble string, and then all the rest are in pairs, unison or octave tuned pairs of strings, just like a 12-string guitar or a mandolin nowadays. So even though you have a pair of strings, you think of them as one, playing those two strings together. And it's just a great instrument. It's not only good for medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque music, but works really great on contemporary music too. It kind of went out of style about the end of the 18th century. So by around 1800, there were only a few cranks still playing the lute. It's a very quiet instrument, and it's really not any louder than just a soft conversational voice. So when musical instruments were being made louder to project into the new concert halls that they had at that time, the lute was kind of left behind because it was just right for playing for a small group of people together.
Was it replaced by the guitar? Or is that the guitar?
I think a combination of the guitar and the harpsichord, and then this newfangled instrument called the piano or pianoforte.
Yes, but Ron, it is somewhat popular because I believe you did get nominated for a Grammy with an album of all original songs you wrote for the lute.
Yeah, that was really nice, and kind of a validation of the instrument as well, to be able to play new music, newly composed music on the instrument and have it be heard.
Yes, well, I definitely love singing with the lute. It's a wonderful instrument for sure. So what else have you got for us?
Here's a tune that I wrote several years back called Cathedral Cave. And it's a piece, it's kind of a tone poem that describes this underwater world just off the coast of Australia beneath the Tasman Sea. And there's a real place, an underwater cave called Cathedral Cave that's very beautiful, very alluring to divers, but because of these strange underwater currents, it's also kind of dangerous for divers. So it just captured my imagination. So this is it. It's Cathedral Cave.
Gorgeous. Wow, that really took me underwater, like floating. It was very beautiful. Then the car came by and
Well, I do have
everything.
to apologize. I don't know. New York's been so quiet, and now tonight is awake.
Hopefully that's not a bad thing.
Well, it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. But
That's lovely, lovely song. So nice to hear you play. Been too long.
Oh yeah, I miss our rehearsals and our playing together, playing with Galileo's daughters,
Yeah.
his honorary daughter.
Well, we will, to quote the Queen of England, we shall be together again.
Indeed.
Yes. Well, great. Well, I'm so glad you're joining us today, and it just is more, makes me feel better about things. We kind of did this for ourselves too, because we're lonely. We just have each other. So it's nice to check in with our friends, and also for our friends watching, think, oh, what's Ronn McFarlane up to? Oh, now they know.
Yeah, I'm just hunkered down. In fact, this whole recording project, Fermis Paradox recording project, would never have happened if it weren't for the pandemic, because it's with Carolyn Zurich, and although she lives just 18 miles from my house in Maryland, we'd known each other for a long time. We had never worked together. We had been working with musicians in different circles. She had worked with her group Ensemble Galilei, which she's led for 30 years now. And
Wow.
of course, I've worked primarily with the Baltimore Consort and with Earhart and some other combinations of musicians. I've always liked her playing, but we just hadn't had the chance to do anything. And she just called up out of the blue almost a year ago and said, "Hey, you want to play a house concert?" And I went, "Sure, glad to do that." And so we decided we would do this house concert in April. So obviously nothing was happening
Ruh-roh.
by April, but we had started rehearsing, really enjoyed playing together. And because this lockdown was happening and we had already been rehearsing, her family and my family, we kind of banded together and decided to become one germ pod together.
Mm-hmm. Sounds
So
good.
so we rehearsed. We tried to stay very careful otherwise, but we just kept rehearsing this music until she went, "Okay, maybe we can make a recording." And I had thought, well, sure, we could make a recording in maybe a couple of years, something like that. And she called up our producer, Dan Mercurio, who said, "Okay, how about June?" And I thought, in a panic way, that's ridiculous. There's no possible way we could get this together by June. But we're not doing anything else. I'm not touring. I'm not dividing my time between preparing for other recordings and concerts as I usually do.
Right.
So it actually was possible to put it together in this short amount of time because we literally weren't doing anything else. So we put it together, recorded it in June, and it was released just in September.
Yeah.
And it's been at a time when the pandemic has just been horrific for so many people.
Mm.
It's a one small bright side that this recording was able to be made just because of the circumstances.
Definitely,
And but we're actually working on a Christmas recording, which hopefully will be out by this time next year.
Wow, super. All
Yeah.
right. Well, that's great. And we'll put in the notes when we post this live stream after it's recorded where people can find Ron's music.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's in all the usual suspect, right? Spotify, Apple Music, and
I heard the whole album on iTunes.
iTunes. Yeah, so
good.
there you go.
It's all up there. You
Great.
can actually buy a physical disc if you remember what CDs are, but it's on streaming
No.
and it
No,
downloads anyway.
don't remember that.
Not hard to find. You know,
Let's hear
I
it for CDs.
saw a cartoon today that where a father was saying, taking out a vinyl LP to his son and said, "Here's an LP. These records are what we used before CDs." And his son goes, "What's a CD?"
That sounds about right.
That is a good one.
Oh,
So, Ron, would you like to play one more piece for us
Absolutely.
before we?
well, in the Christmas season, here is a Christmas tune that actually does go all the way back to the time of the lute, to the 16th century, I believe. And so the lute doesn't just play Allman Brothers and modern music, it does play some old music too. So here we go.
Gorgeous. My favorite
Ah,
hymn. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ron.
thanks for having me over, Sarah and Mark.
Please come again. So we wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll be back tomorrow, inviting you back to our living room. And our guest tomorrow will be Richard Pearson Thomas, who's a wonderful composer and pianist. And it happens to be the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birthday. So he'll be hopefully tinkling the ivories, some Beethoven and his own compositions. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll be listening.
All right.
Okay. Take
Bye,
care.
everybody. See you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow.